So cash payments rose for the first time in a decade in 2022. That's according to new figures from UK Finance, Britain's main financial services association.
Of course, we launched our own Don't Kill Cash campaign here on GB News. Over 310,000 signatures. Bev and others took it into number 10 because what we want is a proper debate in the Commons to protect cash as legal tender, because we know the banks want to get rid of it. Joining us in the studio is our very own Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor with On the Money.
You see, the papers are reporting this as that people are using cash because they're budgeting, but I think people are using cash because it's a political statement.
I think there's a bit of
both.
I think there's a bit of both in that. People certainly those on lower incomes, with respect, find it easier to budget using cash. If you've got, a jam jar full of cash, that's the cash you've got.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to thoughtlessly just tap and spend. But these are interesting figures from UK Finance. They're a complete reversal of what we've seen. Let's have a little look. I've got one of my...
Have you got a graphic here?
One of my graphics here.
Oh,
back in 2011... 21-odd billion cash payments were made in the UK. By 2021, that was down to 5.7 billion. So you see the big drop there. That is the emergence of debit cards, credit cards, and all the rest of it. But in 2022, because the cost of living squeeze hit, it went up to 6.4 billion cash payments. So it's still well below where it was, but up a little bit. And during that period, this is really key, the number of ATMs in this country, I looked it up, peaked in 2016 at just over 70,000. It's now only 50,000.
And falling fast.
And falling very, very fast. Now, what's interesting is that we've had a number of organisations, some of whom have been working with GB News to try and promote our Don't Kill Cash campaign, as you say, well over 300,000 signatures now. And this is from the Federation of Small Businesses. Now, here's a statement from them. They're a very, very powerful organisation. They're like the CBI, but for small firms. And they have many, many members. This is from the Federation of Small Businesses and others, which I'll say. Now is the time, they say, for the government, financial services regulators and industry to come together to establish cash as a payment method of the future, maintain payment choice for business and give consumers the diverse payments landscape they require. That's the Federation of Small Business, the Rural Services Network, Petrol Retailers Association, Association of Convenience Stores. A lot of industry bodies have come together because they're a big, powerful, much bigger corporate vested interests, like the tech giants who want to monitor all our spending, like the big clearing banks who don't want to pay for cash handling, and like big companies who know that small companies need cash and want them to be squeezed.
And banks, I don't think, care anymore about customers, which is why they're closing so many cash machines. And we've got many older people who simply would be lost without cash.
Absolutely right. Now, the government says it is bringing in new laws. Actually, when we launched our Don't Kill Cash campaign, there was a little flurry of new regulations just a week after. I don't know if that was a coincidence. But the Prime Minister, I talked to the Prime Minister about this when I interviewed him recently. New laws are set to come in, so banks have to provide customers with free access to cash within 3 miles of their home. OK, that's what the spin is. But now we're hearing Treasury officials talking about the vast majority of customers will have free access to cash within 3 miles of their homes. And of course, it's all about the remote cases, the more rural cases. And I am really concerned about
even 3 miles is quite a long way if you're an older person who doesn't have a car.
In a place with no public transport.
See, in the rural areas, there's no buses.
That's right.
It's a real problem.
I do think the government's going to have to say something about this. I do think GB News has tapped into a nerve. Many other newspapers are following up with this. Of course, we'll be launching new campaigns, but we're certainly going to keep this one going.
And what we're going to continue to push for is that debate in the Commons. They can do it at Westminster Hall, where they had the big debate yesterday, Liam, about ticket offices in railway stations, which all feeds into the idea that people want to pay for their tickets by cash, rather than using these complicated machines which fleece you.
Well, you know, Andrew, in order to get a debate in Parliament with a public petition, you need 100,000 signatures. Well, GB News viewers and listeners, we've knocked that out of the park, right? We've got 3 times that. And I know people like you, me, Chopper, all the sort of people at GB News that have got high-level political contacts. We are pushing for that debate, and hopefully that will happen. And I completely agree with you on ticket offices. I get a train in from, I wouldn't say rural Britain, but it's about 40 miles away from London most days. Most days I see people at the ticket office asking questions, getting better deals for themselves and their family, often older people. The ticket office staff are absolutely fabulous. I know half a dozen of them by name. They're consummate professionals. They're not particularly well paid, but what a service they provide.
Do. And we can listen now to Chris Loder, the Tory MP who initiated this debate in Westminster Hall yesterday. This is Chris Loder.
I am here today actually to make the case for our station staffing hours to be maintained. Not just because we need these experienced and knowledgeable members of staff, but to make sure that in this cost of living crisis, passengers can get the cheapest fare rather than relying on manipulative apps and online digital prices that overcharge them. The one person that can be trusted to provide the cheapest fare is the ticket office clerk.
Quite right. And of course, Chris Loder used to work on the trains. He's a great train man.
He was a guard. He started out as a guard on a train, and he's become an MP. And in that sense, you know, he's one of those old-fashioned, usually Labour MPs who come from a manual working background. And in his case, he could be and should be a really powerful voice for the train industry in Parliament.
Mark Francois MP was in yesterday, and he came straight from that debate, and he said there was no support for removing the ticket offices.
No.
So where's that pressure coming from, Liam?
That pressure's coming from Network Rail, and the pressure's coming from the Treasury, because the Treasury subsidises Network Rail to provide a train service. I mean, you remember during COVID, the network, we weren't allowed to go anywhere, but they were running endless ghost trains. Endless trains. Why did they do that? What a waste of money.
And the train drivers were never lost any money at all, even though they're on flipping strike them.
That's right.
Talking trains, HS2, Liam. Now, you are
the expert.
You're almost an anorak about HS2.
I am an anorak about HS2.
That's why you're here, to tell us. Just what stage is now vulnerable, and do you think...
The main stages were London to Birmingham, that's stage one. Birmingham to Manchester via Crewe, that's stage 2A. And then Birmingham to Leeds, that's stage 2B. Now, as far as I understand it, stage 2B was, if not scrapped, then put on the shelf quite a few months and years ago, unfortunately, because Leeds is a fantastic city and it desperately needs that connection. Stage 2A, I remember making documentaries with Andy Burnham about this, and I completely agree with the Manchester Mayor. If you scrap Birmingham to Manchester, the main point of HS2 in its entirety disappears, because you're only going to save 10, 20 minutes London to Birmingham with HS2. At that stage of it. And it started out, it was 27 billion was the estimate. We're now up way above 100 billion. It's a complete white elephant. It's out of control. Now, lots of work has gone on around Euston. Some work has gone on in Birmingham, where the station's going to be, though the station there is on an old post office freight site. It's not even smack in the middle of Birmingham. It's not even Birmingham New Street Station, so you have to walk across Birmingham. So I think the whole thing has basically been driven by powerful vested interests, the engineering lobby, and also property developers who've bought up land along the line.
Andy Burnham is going to be furious when he hears this news.
He will be, and rightly so, because this is, whatever levelling up is, this is the opposite.
This is not it. It's the opposite.
And let me just add my voice to yours, Bev, because you are completely right. There's a screaming need for what we call HS3. HS1 was London down to the Channel Tunnel, right? High-speed train. HS2 is what we've just been talking about. HS3 is the nickname for Liverpool all the way across to Newcastle, obviously via Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds.
That would change.
You link together those great northern cities.
Absolutely.
You would have an urban conurbation. You would have an economy that would challenge London, right? But you'd have an economy that would challenge London with cheaper house prices, better living standards, more open space. A lot of young people...
All those university towns, Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle.
A lot of young people would move to that part of the world and ease and rebalance our ridiculously lopsided country.
And the money they save from HS2, if they invested it in those cross-country rail links, would be transformative.
It would be transformative.
And genuinely levelling up.
And that would be genuinely levelling up. But it's not just that. One of the documentaries I once made, Andrew, is all about how you can take just a slither of the money from HS2 and use it at particular pinch points in the network. Smaller projects, tens of millions, maybe low hundreds of millions. Like across Manchester, I mean, everyone in Manchester will know what I'm about to say. There's a thing called the Castlefield Corridor. It's where the whole of the British rail north, west to east system goes across one bridge in the middle of Manchester, and it's one line in either direction. And the fact that they won't widen that is just a nightmare. And the Department of Transport's promised money to widen that many, many times, and they've never quite delivered. There's Ledburn Junction also, where the famous great train robber photograph was taken, you know, the footage. If you eased up Ledburn Junction, that would unpick a lot of pinch points as well. If you electrified trains in the north, 80% of train journeys in the north are on diesel trains, right? Diesel trains, they're slower, they can't accelerate, which means you have fewer of them, which means you have less frequent, more crowded trains, as all commuters into big northern cities on the train know well.
That is our resident train spotter, Liam Halligan.
You must wear an anorak next time you do the trains, Liam, because you do it so well.